Hello everyone. I'm so glad you've joined me again on my channel. Today, we're continuing with the emotional journey of Tu Diep and CEO James. If you've been following along, you know that in the previous episode, Diep collapsed on the street from exhaustion. She had been wandering aimlessly for days, desperately searching for the man she loved. Just when it seemed like all hope was lost, a kind woman from a nearby house came to her aid. After receiving some much-needed care and regaining her strength, Diep didn't waste any time. She set off again, heart focused solely on one goal: finding James. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss our next episode. No matter how many obstacles stood in her way, Diep wasn't going to stop. On the other side, James had been living with guilt and anxiety ever since he realized Diep had disappeared. His attempts to find her had all ended in failure, until, one day, Officer Ly called with news that Diep had been spotted near a deserted bus stop on the outskirts of town. Without hesitation, James jumped into his car, sped off into the night, and braved the stormy, slippery roads. His heart raced with each passing moment. What if he was too late? Could he lose her again? These two people, deeply hurt but still clinging to love, have been through so much. Will fate allow them to meet again, or will their paths continue to miss each other? Will they finally reunite after all the days apart? Let's watch today's episode to see how this story unfolds. Perhaps destiny will give them a second chance. After Diep regained her strength, she didn't allow herself to rest for too long. Even though her body was still weary, her heart had only one thought. She had to keep going. She knew that with each passing day, the chance of seeing James again slipped further away. If she didn't act now, she might lose him forever. So, in the early morning light, before the sun rose too high, Diep followed narrow forest trails. She crouched low to gather wild fruits, some red, some dark black, that the locals had once told her were edible or could be sold. These wild berries weren't worth much, but with patience and careful hands, Diep managed to gather enough to fill a small bag. After hours of wandering and foraging, she made her way to a small roadside market on the edge of the village. The locals had become familiar with the sight of this frail young woman, with messy hair but eyes burning with determination. Out of sympathy, they bought a few portions of her wild fruits. It wasn't much, just enough for some basic items, but for Diep, it felt like a glimmer of hope. Without hesitation, she headed straight for a small roadside store, where she bought some dry bread rolls and a small carton of milk. Finding a shaded spot under a tree, she opened the milk and slowly nibbled on the bread, holding her belongings tightly. It felt like, in that moment, even the smallest distraction could cause everything to disappear. As she ate, she gazed down the road stretching ahead of her, whispering to herself, "Just 30 more kilometers. If I keep going, if I don't stop, I'll see him again in 2 days." Once her simple meal was finished, Diep counted the little money she had left. She wrapped it in a small cloth and tucked it close to her body, calculating that it might be enough to buy a few more bread rolls if hunger struck again. For everything else, she would rely on nature, on the wild fruits and edible roots the villagers had taught her to recognize. Just the thought of James gave her strength. The memory of the man who once held her close, who had walked beside her through life's challenges, burned clearly in her mind. Diep smiled, wiping away a tear she hadn't even noticed had fallen. Standing up, she couldn't afford to waste another moment. She packed her few belongings, a tattered old bag filled with some worn items, a bit of bread, and a makeshift tarp. Wrapping the tarp around herself like a cloak, she set off once more, stepping onto the winding red dirt road ahead. Rain didn't stop her. The scorching sun didn't make her falter. Cold winds pierced her thin clothing, but all she did was pull the tarp tighter and kept walking. Day after day, she crossed forests and streams, sometimes slipping into the mud, sometimes scratching her hands on thorns, and sometimes trembling from icy water. But she never complained. When she was thirsty, she drank from cool streams, and when she was hungry, she ate wild fruits or broke off a piece of her hard bread. Every night, as the mist blanketed the land, Diep curled up beneath a large tree, using her tarp to make a shelter, hugging her bag tightly as she tried to sleep. Each morning, despite aching legs and numb feet, her heart never lost its fire. She whispered to herself, "James, even if I have to crawl, I'll get there. Please wait for me." Sometimes the sky would be filled with gray clouds. Other times, it would burn with the colors of dawn. But to Diep, each day carried only one color, the color of hope. Hope that she would see the man she loved again. Hope that she could hold his hand once more. And this time, she promised herself, she would never let go. As for James, the moment he received the call from Officer Ly, it felt as though he was jolted awake from a long nightmare. The officer reported that a local woman had found Diep, collapsed from exhaustion on the road. Not only that, but after Diep had recovered, she had asked for directions home and seemed to be on her way back. James's heart felt like it was going to burst. He had waited for this moment for days, clinging to hope, yet always haunted by fear. Without wasting any time, he rushed out of his office, jumped into his car, and drove straight to the local police station where Officer Ly was waiting. When they met, both men couldn't hide the joy and emotion in their faces. They quickly reviewed the details, the location of the woman's house, the trail where Diep was last seen, and immediately began planning the search. James stood in front of an old map pinned to the wall, his eyes fixed on every trail, every path that could lead him to Diep. He imagined every step she might have taken through the rain and the woods. Officer Ly spoke gently. "If she's just left recently, she couldn't have gone too far. She's not fully recovered, so she wouldn't have made it much farther." James nodded, determination in his eyes. "We have to find her as soon as possible." Without further delay, they set off, heading toward the small house where the woman had taken Diep in. Along the way, they stopped at every village, speaking to shopkeepers, motorbike drivers, and anyone who might have seen a frail girl with a tattered tarp, carrying a small bag but with eyes full of fire. They showed pictures of Diep, asking anyone they could find. Some people shook their heads, some recalled vague memories, and then one pointed toward a red dirt road that led deep into the forest. "I think I saw a girl like that pass by this morning. Worn clothes, holding a small bag." That response made James's heart clench. He knew it. She was close. She was so close. The distance between them was narrowing. And so they continued on, day and night, under the blazing midday sun, sweating through their clothes but never stopping. There was only one thing left in James's heart: finding Diep and bringing her home. He couldn't stop now. James received a surge of emotions when Officer Ly informed him that Diep had been found. His heart pounded as he processed the news. She was alive. She had collapsed on the road from exhaustion, but fortunately, a kind woman had found her and cared for her. Once she had recovered, Diep had asked for directions home, showing her determination to return. He couldn't waste another second. James quickly packed his things, rushed out of his office, and drove to the local police station. His mind raced with a mix of hope, anxiety, and excitement. Could this finally be the moment he reunites with Diep after all this time? He needed to find her. He had been waiting for this news for days, never losing hope, even though the fear of losing her again never fully left him. At the police station, James met with Officer Ly, who had gathered all the necessary information. The officer explained that the woman who found Diep had mentioned that Diep had been asking for directions to go home. Ly also suggested that since Diep's strength wasn't fully recovered, she couldn't have traveled too far. They quickly mapped out a plan to search the area, focusing on places where Diep could have passed. James stared intently at the map pinned on the wall, running his finger along the roads and paths Diep might have taken. He tried to imagine her journey, through the forests, over streams, braving all kinds of weather. He could feel his determination strengthening with each passing second. "We need to find her," he said, a sense of urgency in his voice. "We have to find her." The two men, driven by the same goal, set off immediately. They headed toward the small house where the woman had found Diep, but along the way they made stops to talk to locals, at roadside stalls, small grocery stores, and markets. James showed pictures of Diep to anyone who might have seen her. Some people recalled vague sightings of a young woman traveling on foot, and one vendor pointed toward a dirt road deep in the forest. "I think I saw someone like that pass by this morning, worn-out clothes and holding a small bag." That information ignited a spark of hope in James's chest. He felt it. She was near. He could feel it in his bones. She was so close, and yet they had not crossed paths. He pushed on without stopping, determined not to rest until he found her. He didn't care how exhausted he was. His only focus was bringing Diep back into his arms. As they continued their search, James's thoughts turned to his mother. She had been just as worried as he was, living through the pain and uncertainty of not knowing what had happened to Diep. He could only imagine the weight she had carried. His heart tightened as he decided to call her. The moment she picked up, James's voice wavered with emotion. "Mom, I just got the news. Someone found Diep. She collapsed, but she's alive, and she's coming home. She asked for directions." His mother's relief was immediate. For days, she had been overcome with guilt and fear, not knowing where Diep had gone. Hearing that Diep was safe, that she was alive and coming back, lifted a heavy weight from her heart. "I want to come with you," she said. "I need to see her. I need to apologize. I can't wait another day." James, with his heart full of warmth, agreed. His mother's sincerity touched him deeply, and he knew it was important for Diep to see that she was no longer alone. Before they left together, James's mother made a quick stop at the home of the older couple. Diep's surrogate parents, the aunt and uncle who had once taken her in during her darkest times. Diep had always considered them family, and now, as James and his mother set out to find her, They wanted to make sure the couple knew she was safe. When they arrived, the couple was sitting under a tree, looking surprised but pleased to see James's mother. After exchanging greetings, she shared the news. "I came to tell you that Diep is alive. She's safe. Yesterday, someone found her collapsed on the road, and a kind woman helped her recover. The first thing she asked was for directions home. She's still trying to come back." Tears filled the aunt's eyes, and the uncle let out a shaky breath, trying to hold back his emotions. "Thank God," the aunt whispered. "Thank God she's alive." James's mother gently continued, "We're heading out to find her now. But if she comes back here, please let us know immediately. We believe she may choose to return to this place where she once found comfort." The couple immediately agreed. "Of course," the aunt said. "We'll keep her safe and call you right away if she returns. Thank you for coming to tell us." With that, James and his mother continued on their way, the feeling of relief beginning to settle in. James had hoped for this moment for so long, and now, with the support of his mother and the people who cared about Diep, he was ready to find her. As the day wore on, the search became more intense. James and Officer Lee had scoured markets, roadside stalls, and paths, but Diep remained elusive. The tension was unbearable, and as they reached an intersection, James could feel his heart sinking. He couldn't help but feel that Diep was right there, just out of reach. James pulled over to a deserted area where a few withered trees and moss-covered benches stood in the rain. He took off his helmet and sat, lost in thought, staring blankly into the fading light. The rain was relentless, and the exhaustion weighed heavily on his body, but there was something deeper troubling him. He couldn't stop thinking about Diep. He missed her so much, and the thought of her walking alone in the rain hurt him more than he could bear. His mind replayed images of her gentle eyes, the way she wiped sweat from his brow, the soft tone of her voice. He knew she was out there somewhere, but why hadn't they found each other yet? It felt like fate was cruelly toying with them. He was so close, yet still separated by an invisible barrier. Suddenly, a figure caught his eye. His mother, who had been searching in the area as well, recognized James from a distance. She quietly approached him and sat beside him without saying a word. After a long pause, she placed a hand on his shoulder, offering comfort without needing to say anything. "I know you're tired, son," she said softly. "But we still have hope. At least we know she's alive and she's walking toward us." James didn't respond immediately. Instead, he closed his eyes and took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his mother's words. "I just wish we'd found her sooner," he murmured. "Maybe then she wouldn't have had to walk such a long, lonely road." His mother smiled gently, offering him the comfort of her presence. "She's stronger than we think. If she's made it this far, she won't give up, and neither will we. She's walking toward love, and I believe that love will guide her exactly where she needs to be." In that moment, both mother and son understood each other completely. They didn't need many words. They had faith. Faith that Diep would be found. Faith that love would lead them back to each other. Diep, meanwhile, had spent the night curled up under a tarp in the forest. The rain had soaked her through, and her body ached with cold and exhaustion. But despite it all, she never lost her resolve. As dawn broke, she packed her things and began her journey once more. She had no umbrella, no raincoat, just a thin tarp to shield her from the downpour. With each step, she reminded herself that she would find James. No matter how hard it was, no matter how far she had to go, she would reach him. As the rain came down harder, Diep continued on the road, her resolve unbroken. Every step she took brought her closer to the man she loved. And this time, she wouldn't stop until they were reunited. In this episode, Diep continues her journey to reunite with James, despite the harsh weather and physical exhaustion. After receiving care from a kind woman, Diep sets out again, her heart determined to find him. With every step, she recalls the love she shared with James and the hope that drives her forward. Meanwhile, James, who has been consumed by guilt and fear, follows a lead about Diep's whereabouts, determined to find her. After a long search, he receives news that Diep is close, but a heartbreaking near miss occurs when they pass each other by in a storm. Diep runs after James's car, but it disappears before they can reunite. Though deeply hurt, she continues on, believing that love will guide them to each other, as both refuse to give up on the bond they share.